The zone from World of Warcraft that devoured days of gameplay and cultivated the most amazing, or terrible, chat experiences is coming to Hearthstone with the Forged in the Barrens expansion. Let's do a, quick review of what's coming. This should be interesting. Our reviews of previous sets have looked at each individual card from 3 different angles. Would it be meta now? Is it likely to be meta later? And does it inspire or enable experimental or meme decks? With the Year of the Dragon cards and most of the basic and classic sets rotating out, alongside the arrival of the core set and a record-settingly short reveal cycle this time, we quickly realized that in-depth individual card reviews wouldn't be feasible this time. I honestly have no idea how Regis Kilbin pumps them out so quickly. Instead, we decided to wait until the entire set was revealed and go class by class, noting the synergies we see that might be exploited and a few fun experimental directions we can go with the cards from the new set. There are links in the description below for each class if you'd like to skip to one you're looking for. Since there's still a ton of hate for Demon Hunter, we're gonna run through the classes backwards. So let's start with Warrior. This time, it looks like Warrior is getting support for 2 main archetypes, Taunt and Frenzy. We'll look at the Taunt-oriented cards in a moment, but let's start with the Frenzy synergy cards for Warrior. In case you're unfamiliar with Frenzy, it's the new keyword for this set. Frenzy is an effect that triggers the first time a minion takes and survives damage. Just like Spellburst minions, it only triggers once, and the minion has to survive for the effect to go off. Warsong Envoy is pretty weak as far as Frenzy minions go, and with Charge rotating to Wild, we won't be able to use Charge and Maiev to set up for a burst damage combo. Still, as a 1-mana 1/3 with upside, he's not bad. Rancor is a great control tool against aggro, but it could also be used as a Frenzy activator in a pinch. Whirling Combatant is a great Frenzy activator or way to clear after Lord Barov. Stonemaul Anchorman is great removal and card cycle on a slightly understated body for the cost, but Overlord Sourfang is the most exciting card for the Frenzy keyword. You probably don't want Sourfang in a deck together with weak Frenzy cards like Warsong Envoy. Rather, a fun deck we'll be building will use Blademaster Samuro, who we'll be looking at a bit more later, alongside Barrens Blacksmith. It would be awesome if Barrens Blacksmith buffs Samuro before or as his Frenzy goes off, but until we experiment with it, we won't know for sure. It may be dependent on which of them gets resurrected by Sourfang first. If it isn't consistent, we may just use Stonewall Anchorman. But we'll certainly run a version with Youthful Brewmaster to bounce Sourfang to get even more value from him. If you were wondering how our meme and experimental decks deviate from meta decks, it's that we almost always try getting max value from a card like Sourfang with something like Brewmaster, or we figure out a somewhat unusual thing to pair with them for wacky, silly, or broken strong synergies. Anyways, that's it for the Warrior Frenzy cards. Let's look at the rest. For the rest of the Warrior cards, there's a bit of a buff and taunt package going on, alongside a remarkably good weapon. Sadly, Armageddillo is rotating out, so we can't go mad with a Menagerie Taunt Warrior like we did during the Dark Moon Fair. But Bulk Up and Morshan Elite make building a wall a lot more reliable. Bulk Up is actually amazing with Morshan Elite, since both the extra copies coming off of Morshan's Battlecry will have the buff as well, meaning that if Bulk Up hits him, we're getting +4/+4 in taunt stats from it. It's still slow, but hopefully the resulting wall of taunts will be enough to stabilize behind. And a great way to get the Battlecry effect from Morshan Elite is with Outrider's Axe, which is amazing card draw and pressure on its own, but also curves really well into Morshan. And if you do build a wall of taunts, perhaps Rokara will be able to survive a few turns to divvy out her buffs. The rush on her with her effect feels great, except that with such a tiny stat line, she's likely to die really easily. A card that would be great with her is Batterhead, but he's headed to Wild. However, Warmaul Challenger should also get buffed multiple times by her. So that's a fun combo. And fortunately for Rokara herself, in a slower deck, you might be able to get the hand buff from conditioning on her before she hits the board. Conditioning is the first ranked spell we're looking at from the set. There's a relatively cheap ranked spell for each class with a base effect that upgrades as you gain mana crystals. Rank 2 is at 5 mana, and rank 3 is at 10 mana. Most of them feel pretty good for the cost and impact around rank 2. But conditioning will feel good on a handful of taunts or Rokara, even at a base level. Though even if Rokara gets a rank 3 conditioning cast on her, she still feels really slow, as the increased stats on her and her allies are only relevant after they've attacked and survived. But we'll definitely be trying our hand at Taunt Warrior once again. Maybe we even run Burning Blade Acolyte for the massive demon with Taunt for another N'Zoth Wall summoning? We'll see. But that's it for Warrior. Now let's burn through the Warlock cards. Speaking of burning cards, a lot of support was given to a new archetype centered around having few or no cards remaining in deck. So do we call this Burn Warlock? I'm partial to Immolation or Destruction Warlock, but we'll have to see what catches on. Anyways, Altar of Fire continues the trend of Warlocks shattering combo deck players' dreams. But this time it comes with what might initially seem like a downside of burning your own cards as well. Soul Rend is also a powerful spell to clear the board, but if it results in a full clear of both sides of the board, it would be possible to burn 14 cards from your deck. That's not a likely scenario, but this drawback is one reason normal control decks might hesitate to run it. So why would you want to destroy a bunch of cards from your deck? Well, if you want the really nice recovery and removal effect from a Blood Shard Bristleback or a super cheap 6/6 taunt in the form of Barrens Scavenger, they are pretty nice rewards. However, the most exciting reward is from Niru Fireblade. The portal he generates when you drop him with an empty deck is an upgraded version of the old Discard Warlock quest reward. But this time, you get a full board of 3/2 imps at the end of each turn. The portal is immune, so there's nothing the opponent can do but kill you before the unending swarm of imps overwhelm them. A deck with Niru Fireblade running Envoy Rustwix as a counter to fatigue with the deck burning spells is what I'm most excited to try out. One version we'll experiment with early on will have Niru and Rustwix as the only minions in the deck alongside Free Admission to improve the chances of drawing them early on, so we're happy to burn through our deck like mad. It will be awesome if we can get Philosophy on Rustwix, but even if not, hopefully 3 turns with swarms of imps and primes saving us from fatigue while generating a ton of extra pressure will be sufficient to close out the game. We'll find out very soon. The remaining cards for Warlock don't point to one specific archetype. Rather, they provide support or value to a couple different playstyles. Grimoire of Sacrifice is okay for a token zoo style, especially when running Nerubian Egg, but could potentially find its way into a control deck. Apothecary's Caravan is the first caravan we're looking at, and it definitely wants to go into a zoo deck to draw 1-cost minions. Sadly, the at the end of your turn effect that all caravans share feels far too slow in a deck looking to quickly overwhelm opponents with a swarm of synergistic pressure. Imp Swarm is also a bit slow to feel good for the cost, but since the rank 2 effect is decent for the cost, it might find its way into a zoo or demon synergy deck. Cabal Outfitter is actually pretty nice for a deck looking to build a board of pressure, and she'll feel great to drop on curve to weaponize a Nerubian Egg. One of our Discord members mentioned that she'll work pretty well in a Disciplinarian Gambling deck as well, and I'm looking forward to trying that out. As for Tamsin Roam, her effect to generate a 0-cost copy of any shadow spell that costs 1 or more is ridiculously cool. But at the time of preparing this review, we only know the spell schools for Core and Barrens cards. All the Year of the Phoenix spells have yet to be classified, so it's difficult to gauge how powerful she'll be. Still, getting extra copies of Drain Soul, Siphon Soul, or even Twisting Nether will feel great. She doesn't have to survive this spell to get you the extra 0-cost copy, but you will need enough mana to play the spell. If Hand of Gul'dan is a shadow spell, I'm curious if triggering it by discarding it will count as casting it. I think it does, in which case that's a frighteningly good combo for Zoo. Though with Expired Merchant rotating out, it won't be a cheap combo for her for ridiculous card draw. But I am kind of curious to pair her with the Dark Portal if that turns out to be a shadow spell. Whatever the case, we'll find fun ways to get ridiculous value from her. And that's it for the Warlock cards. Murloc Shaman is back. And while powerhouse cards like Underbelly Angler, Scargill, and Murloc Warleader are rotating out, these cards make me want to dive right back in. Spawn Pool Forager replaces Murmy as an even better 1-drop Murloc that feels great alongside Murloc Tidecolor. And if you've managed to stick one of those 1-cost Murlocs, South Coast Chieftain can help you ensure board dominance or some face damage with his 2-damage Battlecry. Or, if you've got a few cheap Murlocs in hand to play alongside Firemancer Flurgle, you could melt the enemy board and face away. It's probably a good thing that Toxfin is rotating to Wild, as a 3-mana combo to set up a recurring board clear might be a little too strong for Standard. Since Murlocs are relatively cheap, one of the issues that Murloc decks often run into is running out of Murlocs to keep the pressure going. Tiny Finn's Caravan can help with that if you've taken control of the board, as if it sticks, you'll have a guaranteed Murloc to start your turn. And No Fin Can Stop Us feels fine to buff your otherwise inert totems alongside the double buff to any Murlocs you have. The synergies are cool, and the new neutral Murlocs feel good with the package, especially since the 0-cost Murloc Tiny Fin will be coming back. But it feels like there's not quite enough to build a reliable aggro Murloc deck. Now, as a meme deck player, I'm excited to run these alongside Magic Fin in a little slower style of deck. But pairing the Murloc package with Totem Shaman or the new Elemental Shaman package might just give the results aggro players are looking for. Wait, there's a new Elemental Shaman package? And seamless transition into the rest of the Shaman cards. Alright, so these elementals actually all look strong. Cage Match Custodian was already an auto-include in most Shaman decks, but with Menacing Nimbus returning alongside the new neutral 1-mana Kindling Elemental, the Elemental package will be a force to be reckoned with. Turn 1 Kindling Elemental into Turn 2 Arid Stormer will be a power play that'll be really difficult to deal with. And while a 4-mana 2/6 taunt isn't amazing, Earth Revenant's ability to ping off Divine Shields from a Dude Paladin or clean up the board a bit will be nice, though activating opponents' frenzies could be a downfall for it. And holy cow, Lilypad Lurker's 4/5 body on a Hex for just 1 mana more is insane. Yes, you do have to play an Elemental the turn before to get the Hex effect, but still. Now, we just need to figure out how to get the extra value from Alar with this Elemental package. Jumping back to Chain Lightning, it looks to be a decent early board control tool if Lightning Storm would be overkill. And together with Brucon, on turn 6, it can deal 6 damage to 2 minions. Now, Brucon is exciting in a Control Shaman with the modified version of Tidal Surge coming back, since the lifesteal will heal for 7 instead of just 4. Sadly, we're running into the same issue we had with Tamsin Roam, that we only know the spell schools for Core and Barrens cards thus far. If Dunk Tank is a nature spell, then alongside Lightning Bolt, Brucon can join Imprisoned Phoenix's Waking Up for a 31 damage 10 mana play. If not, Brucon will just have to make his home in control style decks, as the majority of nature spells that would benefit from his spell damage hit minions. Though Tidal Wave would be insane with him if it's a nature spell. Still, especially since he'll look awesome as a diamond card, we'll figure out a fun deck to run him. And that's it for Shaman. So what are rogues doing in the Barrens? Some are running around playing with poisons. It was just confirmed that Nitro Boost Poison is getting nerfed to 2 mana, so that means that Deadly Poison and Paralytic Poison will be the 1-cost poisons, and Nitro Boost Poison and Silverleaf Poison will be the 2-cost poisons. Most rogues running poisons at the moment don't care about having immunity, as they prefer to go face, but being able to take down a taunt with your face and +1 attack is nice. Silverleaf Poison, however, is amazing. If weapon removal doesn't ruin your day, you'll be able to draw at least 2 cards from this. More if it's coating a self-sharpening sword or the new Swine Tusk Shank. But if card draw from the warrior weapon wasn't reason enough to tech weapon removal, rogues running self-sharpening sword and Swine Tusk Shank with all these poisons will make oozes look pretty appealing. If 8 poisons isn't enough for weapon rogue, Apothecary Hellbrim can give you a couple more. And if you're doing all this stuff with buffed weapons, you're not going to be using your hero power. In that case, you might consider running Yoink, or more likely generating it from Wand Maker. 1 mana to draw 2 cards, gain 4 health, or deal 2 extra damage across 2 turns isn't a bad complement to shanking your opponent to death. When we want to go crazy with poisons, which we will at some point, we can run all the poisons alongside Swine Tusk Shank, Self-Sharpening Sword, Dr. Krasnov, and use Shadow Steps and Potions of Illusion to get even more poisons from Apothecary Hellbrim. Will we make a Shank bigger than Sargeras' sword? We'll have to see. Now, Silverleaf Poison isn't the only new card draw tool for rogues. We also get Field Contact, and he can draw a ridiculous number of cards in the right deck. Prize Plunderer, Wand Thief, and Brain Freeze will provide cheap combo draw alongside any Battlecry minions you run. To set up a cheaper hand and get amazing value with Field Contact, you could trigger the Frenzy effect from Efficient Octobot. And if that's not enough, Scab's Cutter Butter will let you play a few more cards for far less than they normally would cost. But if thinking about combo cards has you lamenting the rotation of Eviscerate, don't worry. Wicked Stab is a significant upgrade to Eviscerate in all but the earliest turns. With 2 of these on turn 10, you just have to deal 18 damage to your opponent over the course of the game. Taunts won't save them. But if you need just a little more damage, Oil Rig Ambusher may be able to help. She'll do extra damage when joining your hand from Secret Passage, Shadow Step, or naturally. And she's not terrible at a base level. So what crazy things are we going to do with all this card draw and discounts? A lot of different stuff, but the first thing that comes to mind is a super speedy Cthulhu the Shattered. Togwaggle Scheme and Quest Rogue will be sorely missed, but with all these discounts and draw engines, plenty of doors to broken powerful plays will open soon. And that's it for rogues. As someone who abhors the Convincing Infiltrator Res Priest and Steal All Your Stuff Thief Priest that has dominated Priest's gameplay for quite some time, I'm glad to see Blizzard encouraging the class to go in a different direction. And the direction most of the cards are pointing towards is restoring health. At first glance, Desperate Prayer feels really awkward since you're healing the enemy hero as well. However, against aggro decks, it's nice to have the healing no matter what, and as a cheap way to set up a board clear with Xyrella, it begins to feel a lot better. As a control tool, Xyrella looks amazing. You can use her with a hero power in a pinch, but Renew is also a cheap setup for a decent clear with a 4/4 body. Of course, there are other ways to restore health to prepare for dropping her as well. Devouring Plague is a nice way to soften the board for a Flame Strike with a 4/4. Or in the case where you played the ultimate anti-aggro taunt, Light Shower Elemental, but actually traded off on your own turn, say into a Bone Chewer Brawler with a Guardian Auk Merchant shield, she'll clean up the board for you. But Xyrella is not the only payoff card for healing. Priest of Anshi dropping as an 8/8 taunt will be a nice way to apply counter pressure to opponents. One wacky and remarkably unreliable experiment I want to try with these cards is to toss Xyrella into a deck with a couple Nazmani Bloodweavers, a ton of spells, Soulbound Ashtongue, and Silas Darkmoon to see just how much damage we can send face with Xyrella and a ton of discounted healing. Sadly, Wild Pyromancer and Circle of Healing are both rotating out, but with help from Light Shower Elemental on a few increased health minions, we might be able to do a ridiculous amount of damage. When we put that wacky deck together, if we have enough spells alongside Sethic Veilweaver, it's possible we could get value from Void Flare as well, allowing us to set up a big board. However, I'm not sure that we or any other deck will be excited to run Power Word Fortitude. If we can reliably get it down to 4 mana or less, it will feel okay to run, but the likelihood of having to pay more is quite high. Another card that feels underwhelming is Soothsayer Caravan. Not only is it slow, but it's half a thought steal when it survives. Yes, you'll be guaranteed a spell, but against most decks, that distinction won't matter much. As mentioned earlier, I haven't been a fan of Thief Priest, so I guess I can say I'm happy that this is the only card coming to replace the cards going out for that archetype. And continuing the less than amazing leftover cards for Priest, Serena Bloodfeather as a legendary feels remarkably awkward. In most cases, the best target for her to hit is an 8/8. When she does, the opponent's minion will become a 4/4 and she'll become a 5/5. But by the time opponents are playing 8/8s, a 2-mana 5/5 isn't terribly exciting. And you'll likely have other tools online to deal with big threats. I don't see where she fits, or any busted way to use her, so she feels very underwhelming. Fortunately, the ranked spell for Priests feels a little bit better. Until turn 5, Condemn doesn't do much more than clear Gibberlings, Divine Shields, and Silverhand Recruits, but in the mid-game, a 2-mana, 2-damage AoE feels good as a partial clear to slot into a turn, and in the late game, the 3 damage can soften up the board, leaving the remaining 8 mana for a board swing or power play. Overall, Priest's cards actually feel a lot weaker than recent expansions, and without Galakron value to reward control plays, if a Xyrella OTK doesn't work, Priest may be relying on core set Synergies or Watchpost decks to carry them through this expansion. There's not much more to say for Priest at the moment. Onward to Paladin. One direction this set is pushing Paladins is towards an archetype we haven't seen for a while. Secret Paladin. Galloping Savior is a cheaper rat trap with a smaller reward, but that reward comes with Taunt, making this a much more awkward card to deal with. Now, one of the reasons we haven't seen Secret Paladin work for quite some time is that filling your deck with 1-mana secrets means you can run out of gas quickly, and top decking secrets in the late game feels bad. Mysterious Challenger helped with this in the past by pulling secrets out of your deck and putting them into play. Sword of the Fallen does the same thing, albeit not all at once, but this can be played a lot sooner. So there's another decent secret and a way to cycle through secrets faster, but why bother? Well, not only can you cycle through the deck faster with Northwatch Commander if you have a secret equipped, but Cannon Master Smythe can reward you with a board of 3/3 soldiers. And as the opponent works to clear your board, the secrets come back into play in an order that's random to them, making each play a little more awkward for them. I'm not sure how much gas we'll be able to get from him, but we'll try running Cannon Master Smythe in a secret deck with Youthful Brewmaster. And perhaps with this much synergy to cycle through and thin the deck, we might be able to make a Cthulhu Paladin work? We'll see. There's one last card before the second group, and this one supports another archetype likely to re-emerge with a vengeance due to additional synergies coming with the core set. Silverhand Recruit or Dude Paladin. Soldier's Caravan has the same downfall as the other caravans of being slow, but with cheap buffs and a double dude summon effect that really synergizes well with a lot of the other cards the class will have, this may be the caravan with the greatest chance of success. Dude Paladin is coming, and Soldier's Caravan is one more hatchery for the swarm of Silverhand recruits. But secrets and dudes aren't the only synergies paladins get this time. There's also a lot going on with holy spells. The ranked spell, Conviction, is a generally better Blessing of Might. While you don't get to choose the target, +3 attack to 1, 2, or 3 minions for just 1 mana is really strong. This will likely find a home in Dude Paladin to make bubbled dudes even more frightening. But if an archetype around the holy spell synergies develops, this could make the cut there too. For example, playing it to summon and buff the 2/2 medics with lifesteal from Veteran War Medic before rushing them in with an animated broom would be a great way to get even more value from their lifesteal. It would be interesting if we could flood the board with 2/2 medics from War Medic, but how can we afford so many holy spells? Well, Librams were noted as a group of spells that will fall into the holy spell school, so that'll make things easier, but Cariel Roam can also help by reducing the cost of holy spells in hand. With Rush and Divine Shield on a 4/3 body, she's already a strong play, but if she makes a few spells cheaper while she's at it, we won't complain. So how do you ensure you have holy spells in hand for her to discount? Knight of Anointment might be able to help with that. He has super weak stats, but as targeted card draw, he might just make the cut. But one card that might not make the cut in any decks is Invigorating Sermon. 4 mana to give +1/+1 to all minions you control, have in hand, or in deck is way too expensive. Yes, it's possible to discount it with Cariel, but most of the cards Paladin is using to flood the board are spell-based, meaning this is a one-time effect for a wide board with a minor improvement for future turns. Survival of the Fittest sees play in Druid because it's a major stat increase, and Druids can get to 10 mana quickly. That one gives +1/+1 per 2.5 mana, whereas this one costs 4 mana for just +1/+1. Unless I'm missing something, this will hardly see play. Once we learn what the remaining holy spell cards are, I would be curious to get extra value from Cariel Roam with Gift of Luminance and Faceless Manipulator, dropping even cheaper Librams of Hope and buffing them to enormous size all at once, protected from targeted removal with Robes of Protection. Maybe we toss in an Argent Braggart for good measure? Brawl, Shadowward Ruin, and Cascading Disaster will still wreck them, but other decks should struggle to deal with them. We'll find out soon. And that's it for Paladin. So, mages are doing something really fun with their hero power this time. In the past, we've summoned Ragnaros from Jan'alai the Dragonhawk as a reward for dealing damage with hero powers. But this time, the reward is even more massive. Mordresh Fire Eye will deal 10 damage to all enemies, including face, if you've dealt 10 damage with your hero power. Normally, that would be a decent challenge, but with help from Wildfire granting a permanent stackable damage buff, Fallen Hero coming back with the core set, and Reckless Apprentice firing off your hero power to deal its damage to all enemies, again, including face, this is completely doable by turn 10 without sacrificing the early game. One thing we'll do with Mordresh is eat some mana biscuits to drop a Potion of Illusion on him and get a 1 mana 1/1 copy of him back. That'll allow us to deal 20 more damage the following turn for just 6 mana if we have the second Potion of Illusion in hand. So a pretty cool 2-turn kill. Highkeeper Ra, eat your metallic heart out. Mages are also getting Ruined Orb, which serves as a semi-replacement for Arcane Breath. Unlike Arcane Breath, this can go face and doesn't require a dragon in hand. If you'd like to discount the spell you discovered from Ruined Orb, Arcane Luminary can help you out, but the discount won't go below 1 mana. And wow, he seems like he'll be really good with Evocation. Though I am curious if he'll actually increase the cost of discovered copies of Flurry and Mana Biscuit to cost 1 instead. Hopefully not. In case you were wondering, Flurry is the 0 mana ranked spell for Mage we'll look at, well, right now. While mages are losing a few of their really powerful freeze cards from the basic and classic sets during rotation, namely Frostbolt, Frost Nova, and Blizzard, they will have a few new freeze tools. Flurry is the ranked spell that will freeze 1, 2, or 3 random enemy minions for 0 mana, depending on how many mana crystals you have. If your opponent is developing a frightening board early on, you could play Flurry on turn 5 to freeze 2 minions and drop Varden Dawngrasp to freeze the rest of the minions while dealing 4 damage to the minions that were already frozen. Or, if you prefer a Frost Nova on a 3/3 body for 1 mana more, Varden can be just that for you. Another way to freeze opponents can result from the Oasis Ally secret, punishing opponents for attacking your minions. You can also freeze enemies with the 1/1 Frosted Elementals from Rhyme Tongue, which pop out after you play a Frost spell. A small behind-the-scenes side note, it's at this point in the script writing that patch 20 hit, and we can now determine the spell schools for Year of the Phoenix cards as well. We won't be going back to earlier sections, but we'll use the new information moving forward. So Rhyme Tongue is fine stats as a 3 mana 3/4, but to get immediate value from him, you'll want to play him alongside Flurry or on turn 4 with a Snap Freeze or Brain Freeze. If he sticks to the board, Oasis Ally or Ice Barrier are interesting ways to spawn an extra Frosted Elemental or two. We will build a deck with the aim of freezing as many things as possible alongside Varden Dawngrasp and Glacier Racer. I would be surprised if it's good, but we'll still test it out. The last Mage card is Refreshing Springwater, which could allow you to draw 2 cards for essentially no mana, as long as the cards you draw are spells. You'll still have access to Arcane Intellect and Cram Session to draw efficiently, but a deck with half or more of their cards as spells may consider replacing Arcane Intellect with this, or running them both. I doubt we'll see many mages with empty hands once this set hits. Anyways, that's it for Mage. For Hunters, we're going to look at the cards which support an archetype I would love to be good, but just doesn't seem to get there yet. Spell Hunter. The card that made me think we might actually get there when it was announced is Barak Kodabane, since he draws you a 1, 2, and 3 cost spell from your deck. If we had access to a few good spell damage minions, Varisa Windrunner is headed to wild, we could piece together quite the burst damage combo. Arcane Shot and Quick Shot are a great 1 and 2 mana start, but the only 3 mana spells available are Deadly Shot and Petting Zoo. Not quite what we were hoping for. However, Barak can also draw you Wound Prey as a split way to deal 2 damage, as well as the rank spell Tame Beast. Tame Beast bumps up by +2/+2 per rank, so it's looking like a pretty nice way to take control of the board for cheap. And if you have a bunch of cheap spells, you might be able to get a bit of value from Kolkar Packrunner. He's just summoning you 1/1 hyenas with Rush, but he feels okay alongside Pack Tactics or Open the Cages, or even the cheaper version of Lock and Load coming back to standard. Knife Juggler and Cult Master are rotating out, so I'm not sure what broken things we can do with him yet, but we may be able to piece something together. One card that does look like a lot of fun is Piercing Shot. It's a Hunter Fireball that's guaranteed to get full damage. We could even ensure 5 damage goes face by targeting one of our own 1/1 hyenas in a pinch. But this is just generally a good card that will probably become a staple in most Hunter decks. Now, while the Spell Hunter archetype hasn't quite come together, a different direction for Hunter got quite a bit of support. Beasts are back for Hunters. We knew something might be up when Dire Frenzy was announced as part of the core set, and Blizzard did not disappoint. First up is Sunscale Raptor, which starts as a nice 1 mana 1/3 stat line and has a great upside when it survives damage. Without any buffs, it can chain into a 3/4, then a 5/5, then a 7/6, and so on. I'm a little doubtful that Dire Frenzy and other buffs will stick on the shuffled copies, but it'll be fun to build an ever-growing swarm of raptors. Now, as a way to keep drawing and buffing these raptors, Warsong Wrangler is pretty exciting. You probably want her to discover a beast you've copied a few extra times with Dire Frenzy for max value, but since she selectively draws a beast, we won't mind getting a bigger King Crush from her. Speaking of King Crush, we need to figure out a way to discount Darkmoon Rabbit or Tavish Stormpike so we can drop them on the board together, and the Darkmoon Rabbit rushing in will pull King Crush from our deck. And that's where things stop. Still, it'd be cool. Actually, the 8 mana play of Tavish Stormpike into Trampling Rhino to pull a Mok'Nathal Lion into Zixor into a Scavenging Hyena seems like it might be a pretty good thing to do too. I doubt we'll pull off that exact chain very often, but there will be some wacky things we can do with him. Switching gears for a moment, Lock and Load won't be the only way for hunters to generate a little extra value once they've dumped everything onto the board. Pack Kodo is another beast that'll help you by allowing you to discover another beast, a secret, or a weapon. Not too shabby for a 3 mana 3/3. However, what is looking pretty shabby for Hunter is Prospector's Caravan. Hunter doesn't have great ways to keep a caravan alive, nor do they have a habit of keeping many minions in hand. So the delayed hand buff from this doesn't feel reliable at all. I'd love to buff a couple augmented porcupines or trampling rhinos to be even bigger, but I think we'll have to stick with more reliable means of growing them. Still, it looks like there are a couple different directions hunters can go with beasts this time. It'll be fun to see what we can do with them. So, hunters aren't the only ones playing with beasts. Druids also got a couple, starting with Thickhide Kodo. This 4 mana beast with taunt has a major upside. When it dies, it leaves its thick hide behind as 5 armor for you to hide behind. Now, while this is the only Druid minion that starts with taunt this time, Blizzard went out of their way to revive the taunt Druid archetype, but potentially in a much more aggressive form than we've seen before. And the engine behind this new taunt Druid is Razormane Battleguard. As a 2 mana minion, which reduces the cost of the first taunt minion you play each turn, he's like a free 2/3 body on the first turn. And if the taunt he discounted does its job well, he might live long enough to discount taunts for another turn or two. While Thickhide Kodo is nice with him, we already have a number of really nice taunts to pair with him from previous sets, such as Archspore Mashifin, Dreaming Drake, or a more aggressive taunt like Bonechewer Brawler. Annoyotron is returning as well. And if you thought one Annoyotron was annoying, imagine dropping Mark of the Spikeshell on it. It'll grow into a 3/4 and give you another copy to drop for free the next turn if your Razormane Battleguard survives. Now, another reason I'm thinking a more aggressive taunt druid might develop is due to Thorngrowth Sentries. These, alongside the token buff cards we've come to know and love, or hate, except Savage Roar, which is rotating out, will serve as an ever-growing wall that the opponent must trim away or die. But to make that ever-growing wall even more persistent to removal, druids also get Plague Maw the Rotting. When opponents kill a taunt, that's not the end, as long as they can't snipe him before crashing into the wall of taunts. So aggro taunt druid might be a thing. But I'm really excited to use Razormane Battleguards to drop discounted Archspore Mashifins and Greybows for Plague Maw to give us even more absurd value from their Deathrattles. It'll be fun to see how many Greybow Deathrattles we can get going before dropping a couple Mashifin Primes. So we started to talk about the beasts, but the taunt package pulled us in first. Still, there are a couple more beast-focused cards for Druid. One of those is the Druid of the Plains, a sizable rush minion with a frenzy effect to transform into a 6/7 Kodo with taunt, which, by the way, will also come back as a base 6/7 body if Plague Maw is sitting out there. That's a lot of value packed into one card. But 7 mana is expensive, you say? Well, Living Seed will not only help you draw it from your deck, but it will reduce its cost by 1, 2, or 3, depending on how many mana crystals you have. Now, Living Seed does compete against Guardian Animals for inclusion in Druid decks running beasts, as one wants beasts to remain in your deck and the other will draw them into your hand. Still, they may find a way to coexist. However, a weird direction I'd like to go with Living Seed in Big Druid is to use this to draw Marsh Hydra from our deck, reducing it to 5 mana or less. and drop the Marsh Hydra alongside Menagerie Warden, which is returning, summoning 2 7/7s, a 4/4, and adding 2 8-drops to our hand. That feels like just the right amount of greed for a 10 mana play. That is, if we haven't already cast Survival of the Fittest. Do note that Living Seed is one of the 20 nature spells that will be available to Druid once the expansion hits. That's relevant because Guff Rune Totem cares about when you cast nature spells, but he's a little bit more likely to find a home buffing friendly minions in a Token Druid, since quite a few of the spells Token Druid use fall within the nature school. Without Savage Roar as a burst finisher, keeping the Swarm on board alive longer will be more relevant than ever, and Guff Rune Totem might meet that need. But another card that could meet that need is Pride's Fury. 4 mana for a buff like this feels ridiculously overcosted, but Druid is the ramp class, and the ability to buff a nearly full board well enough to almost ensure they'll survive might give this a chance to see play. We'll see. Now, the most surprising and fun-looking card for Druids is Celestial Alignment. You've raced to 7 mana just to throw it all away. But the payoff is that both you and your opponent go back to 0 mana crystals, and all the cards in your opponent's hand and deck, as well as yours, go to costing just 1 mana. While it's true that your opponent will be the first to benefit from this, the idea is that you've built a much greedier deck that can start dropping massive threats to counter your opponent floundering around playing 1 or 2 slightly reduced cost cards. Will it be a viable archetype? Almost certainly not. But will we play it like mad to figure out the most absurdly greedy, ridiculous things we can do with it? Oh yeah, you know we will. And finally, we get to everyone's favorite class, which got actually relatively well-balanced cards. Is that right? Well, anyways, the first group of cards for Demon Hunters support a very interesting direction to take the class: Deathrattles. Tuskpiercer is a great turn 1 play to set up selective card draw, and honestly, if the entire remainder of this group fails, there's still a chance this sees play to draw a specific card out. But if you'd like to chain Tuskpiercer into a natural follow-up, Razorboar is pretty nice. And when it dies, if you have Razorfin Beastmaster in hand, he can get pulled onto the board, which can subsequently pull a 4-cost or less Deathrattle minion from your hand. In just the right conditions, you can summon a lot of Deathrattles onto the board without paying any more for them. And this value train meets its ultimate stage in the form of Death Speaker Blackthorn. Unlike the Razorboar and Beastmaster, he pulls minions from your deck, but he'll summon 3 Deathrattles that cost 5 or less. Now, if you're running this whole package, he could just end up summoning the Razorboars and Beastmasters, or he could summon you Deathrattle minions like Burning Blade Acolyte and Talon Fordring. I hold these 2 minions up as high rolls because there aren't really any other minions that are exciting to get from Blackthorn at the moment. There are a couple other decent Deathrattles like Deathhead's Cultist and Darkspear Berserker, but I'm not sure this archetype will be strong enough to spawn a meta deck. However, we'll certainly put something together with Baron Rivendare and Burning Blade Acolyte in an attempt to do crazy things with it. The last Deathrattle synergy card is Vengeful Spirit. He's a good way to pull Deathrattles into your hand for Razorboar and Beastmaster to pull if you can get him into an outcast position. But I'm a little bit more excited to use him to pull Claw Machines out of our deck. The Claw Machines will allow us to keep the flow of minions going and buff a minion that gets pulled into our hand into an outcast position. And what minion would be good to buff and draw into an outcast position? How about Kurtrus Ashfallen? He'll attack the left and rightmost enemy minions when played, but if he's played from an outcast position, he'll be immune. If he is immune, there's a decent chance he takes out a minion or 2 with his base stats, turning into a nice partial board clear with a 3/4 body left over. If he's not outcast, it hurts to play him. But if we can buff him with something like Claw Machine, he'll feel a lot better in either case. But again, with enough mana, we can potentially draw him directly into an outcast position. I'm not sure if he's good enough to make the cut in meta decks, but this is one way I see us using him. As for the rest of the Demon Hunter cards, there are a couple sigils they're getting. Sigils are spells you play to set up for a strong follow-up on your next turn. For example, Sigil of Silence will start your next turn by silencing all enemy minions, knocking out buffs, taunts, and Deathrattles from the enemy's side. Of course, the opponent will be able to see the sigil you cast by hovering over the icon, sitting where secrets normally do on your hero portrait. So they'll know what's up, and they can choose not to play valuable minions into the sigil, but that might be enough to set up for your final push or seize control of the board. Sigil of Flame gives your opponent a similar conundrum, but it might also open the door for them to kill off one of their own Deathrattle minions or trigger Frenzy effect that they might otherwise have difficulty with. It's unlikely, but there are some cases in which this one could backfire. Due to the delay, both of these will be quite skill testing to guess the best timing to drop them, if they see play at all. Now, Fury most likely will see play, largely as a replacement to Twin Slice, which is rotating out. Demon Hunters rarely play till turn 10, so this will only ever be played as a +2 or +3 attack buff. I would say I'm joking, but yeah, that feels pretty accurate. But really, this almost certainly slots into any deck that was running Twin Slice before as a slightly downgraded replacement. And lastly, we have Vile Call, Dreamway Guardian's mutated cousins. Demon Hunter currently has plenty of lifesteal without running these, and with token synergy cards like Wrathscale Naga and Feast of Souls rotating out, I don't know that there's any reason for Demon Hunter to play this. So with Demon Hunters, we'll experiment with the Deathrattle package and see how threatening we can make Kurtrus Ashfallen. But that's it for Demon Hunter. Now let's dive into the neutral cards, starting off with a really interesting package coming with the Barrens, Watch Posts. All 3 Watch Posts can't attack, but they're well statted for the cost and have an effect that punishes the opponent one way or another if they're left alone. Far Watch Post will make every card your opponent draws cost 1 more, but not more than 10. Morshan Watch Post will summon a 2/2 after your opponent plays a minion. And Crossroads Watch Post will give all your minions +1/+1 when they cast a spell. It's a bit of a hit or miss which Watch Post will be relevant during a particular matchup, but Far Watch Post seems to be the most disruptive. Now your opponent could just go face and ignore these if the effects aren't really hindering their game plan, so you may want to run something like Defender of Argus to get secondary value from them. And you may want your opponent to remove them to make way for the payoff for playing a number of Watch Posts, Kargal Battlescar. Without any rally or raised edge shenanigans, it's possible for Kargal to summon a full board of 5/5s as long as you've played all the Watch Posts you can run. However, cards like Rally and Raised Edge will make it easier to get full value from him. That is, unless you intentionally only want to summon 5 other 5/5s, so you have space to play a Youthful Brewmaster or Tenwu of the Red Smoke to bounce him if you aren't already just using a Shadow Step or something on him. Sadly, Shadowhunter Vol'jin is too expensive to play with him naturally, but if they let him survive on board, it'll be possible to get even more value out of Kargal. So, as Vol'jin has been out for a while, we won't cover him more than to say that he's a cool card you can use offensively and defensively. That's it. Now, although Frenzy is the keyword for this set, Warriors are the only ones who got more than 1 Frenzy card, and actually a majority of the classes didn't get any Frenzy card. But there are quite a few neutral Frenzy minions. Some of the stronger Frenzy cards are Sunwill Initiate, Gold Road Grunt, and Taraho Brave. Their effects make them tricky to deal with in one way or another. Barrens Blacksmith is actually pretty strong in decks going wide, but it feels like Animated Broomstick or Penflinger will be a necessary component to ensure value from her in any deck other than Warrior. Warrior has Overlord Sourfang and a number of other Frenzy activators, so she'll be alright on her own there. Now let's look at what may be the most impactful Frenzy card of all, and one players who get the rewards track Tavern Pass will be eager to play as the first ever diamond card, Blademaster Samuro. He's got Rush, which is awesome for a Frenzy card, and his Frenzy effect will deal his attack damage to all enemy minions. He's not weak at a base level, but will really want a way to boost his attack for extra board clear potential. Warriors lost Inner Rage and Cruel Taskmaster, possibly to avoid this guy being absolutely busted, but each class has access to some form of hand or minion buff to get extra value from him, even if it's just to run Overlord Runethak or Barrens Blacksmith. We'll be making a number of decks with Blademaster Samuro, looking for broken ways to get extra value from him. Right now, Rogue and Warrior look the most exciting, but we'll figure out stuff to do with him in just about every class. It should be fun. So those were probably the strongest of the neutral Frenzy minions, but there are several remaining, and they're nothing to scoff at. River Crocolisk's cousin looks a lot more dangerous than him, ensuring anything but a clean removal will punish the opponent quite hard. I mean, it's just a 2-mana card, and River Crocolisk did make the cut for the core set. Yikes. Gruntled Patron may seem like the reincarnation of Grim Patron at a reduced cost, and indeed, they're somewhat similar, but since Frenzy can only happen once per copy of him, Gruntled Patron can't go quite as crazy as Grim Patron did. Still, it'll be fun to figure out a way to fill the board with patrons. And Peon isn't a bad 2-drop, but the huge range of possible spells from him in every class makes him remarkably inconsistent. Still, he might find a home in a deck or two if they're not concerned about getting guaranteed value from him. And Razormane Raider has decent potential to do a lot of extra damage with the right setup. I'm not sure if it'll be worth running him when most decks are so streamlined, but still, we'll try out each of these and see if any of them turn out to be a lot better than anticipated. Also here is Talented Arcanist. He's a quick and cheap way to get +2 spell damage, but since his effect only helps a single spell, I'm not sure he'll be worth a slot in decks, even ones looking to get amazing burst damage. I'm not aware of a spell that becomes busted powerful by itself from just 2 spell damage. Perhaps Lifesteal Demon Hunter runs him alongside Moarg Artificers to set up a quicker, slightly more reliable combo turn? That's one of the rare cases I can imagine Arcanist being played. We'll find out. Now we get a peek at the remaining beasts and elementals. We already talked about how Kindling Elemental will help Shaman set up some strong plays, but there's a slight chance a Mage deck could benefit from Kindling Elemental as well. And surprisingly, there are a fair number of elementals in Priest. This doesn't synergize with them very well, but it's something to keep an eye out for in future sets. And hey, playing this into a Gyroworm on turn 2 in any deck running a bit of an elemental package will feel pretty good. The other neutral elemental is Primordial Protector, which is reminiscent of Spiteful Summoner, but objectively better. While Primordial Protector is more expensive, it serves as targeted card draw, and you don't feel bad running a bunch of other spells in your deck. Druids and Hunters are the only classes with 10 mana spells, but 7 of the classes have access to spells that cost 8 or more as a way to get a sizable minion as well. Though I'm not certain how the Libram of Hope discounts will affect it. Still, we'll definitely throw this into a Negran Slam and Jewel of N'Zoth Hunter deck for great memes. But I will say that Hecklefang Hyena feels objectively bad in any deck not intentionally injuring itself, and Quest Priest is rotating out, while Warlock doesn't have anything that really rewards self-damage at the moment. So it won't see play. Toad of the Wilds could see play in a Druid or Shaman deck, but after looking at it a bit, I doubt it makes the cut either. Maybe in Rogue? However, Venomous Scorpion is kind of interesting. Without the Discover effect, it would be relegated to the unplayable pile, but as a resource generator guaranteed to take down a minion or eat removal from the opponent, it might just get there. Rogue is the class with access to the most poisonous minions. Perhaps we'll make a super poison rogue? It's a flavorful pair with the poison weapon stuff they got. We'll try it for meme's sake, and probably agree to never venture there again. And then there were Deathrattles. We already mentioned most of these when discussing Demon Hunter, but Deathhead's Cultist is perhaps the most exciting, cheap anti-aggro taunt we've seen in a while. Not only will it take a hit or two, but it'll heal you to help stabilize against the aggro deck. I may be overvaluing it, but I like it. And while Burning Blade Acolyte is slow, opponents are likely to try ignoring him, meaning there's a good chance we could drop Baron Rivendare on turn 6 and trade the Acolyte in for 2 massive taunts instead of just 1. Darkspear Berserker is way overstated for the cost, and if you're an aggro deck or a priest running Focused Will, you probably don't care about the downside as much. Now, there are some pretty nice Deathrattle cards sticking around after rotation, but even in a deck built mainly around Deathrattles, I'm not sure that Barrens Trapper will make the cut. At those stats for the cost and only discounting Deathrattles by 1, I don't think it'll be worth it. However, a card that really should go into just about every deck is Mankrik. We've got to help him find his wife. But really, you do get a free 3/10 that immediately does 3 face damage when drawn. Even if his wife's demise is hiding near the bottom of your deck, if you draw it at any stage of the game besides having a full board, it's decent value. And I'm looking forward to playing him in a rogue with a bazillion ways to bounce him. We may have to name the deck Mankrik's Trauma, but I really want to see if we can fill the board with consumed Mankriks. So the only class that got any new Murloc synergy was Shaman, but when we do build a Shaman deck with the Murloc package, both Lushwater Mercenary and Lushwater Scout deserve a spot as the synergies are quite strong. The slim pickings of Murloc and Dragon synergies left over within Paladin make it doubtful that a Murloc package makes the cut in Paladin, but we can certainly try it as an experimental deck. And Crossroads Gossiper is an interesting card. She seems slow, but with Oh My Yogg and Noble Sack in Paladin, or Dirty Tricks and Bamboozle in Rogue, she might get some real value before the opponent can deal with her. We're definitely going to throw her into a Shadow Jeweler Hanar Secret Tree Rogue and see just how much she likes to gossip. I guess the danger of playing Secret Tree Rogue is that some opponents might be teching Horde Operative in their decks. If Secret Mage continues to be an issue or Secret Paladin does become a viable meta deck, some decks might consider including her. She doesn't destroy the opponent's secrets, but you will know what they have so you can play around them a little more efficiently. And if you get more than one secret from the opponent, that's pretty great value from a 3-mana 3/4. But if you're looking for excellent value, Kazakus Golem Shaper can probably get you what you need. The only deck restriction to get value from him is not to have any 4-cost cards in deck. Whether you built your deck without any other 4-mana cards, or you're patient enough to draw the others before playing him, you'll have 3 major choices to make once you play him. Initially, you'll need to decide if you want a 1-mana 1/1, a 5-mana 5/5, or a 10-mana 10/10 Golem. And then you get to decide what traits you want your Golem to have. The first set of choices will be from 3 of the following choices: Rush, Taunt, Divine Shield, Lifesteal, Stealth, and Poisonous. Your choices for the second trait will be 3 options from this list. You can buff your other minions by a certain amount. The amount in parentheses for each of these is based on if you chose the 1-mana, 5-mana, or 10-mana version. Alternatively, you could summon a copy of it, or perhaps you need to freeze some enemy minions, or you could deal 3 damage to random enemy minions, and spell damage could be useful in some cases, but card draw is often appreciated. Honestly, it feels like the original Kazakus potions were a bit more impactful, but you are getting a body alongside these effects, so I'm betting Kazakus will find his way into a number of decks. Now, I'm not sure if we want to become sculptors, but we might whip out some chiseling daggers to carve a few extra golems using all the tools Rogue has to bounce him. It should be interesting. And finally, we've reached the last cards from the set. We've got a couple of pirates, a couple of priest or paladin cards, and a mixed removal evolve token generator for Shaman. There are a few different decks we could slot each of these into, but none of them feel broken powerful. If Prize Vendor were a more reliable way to fill the opponent's hand, I could see a world where South Sea Scoundrel could be used to mill cards while gaining resources, but I'm not sure she'll see play unless a meta deck or two develops that's just running a few really powerful spells, which could still backfire since we help our opponent draw it too. Now, Injured Marauder could be useful for the Zyrella burst damage combo we mentioned earlier, but it's just generally a good taunt in a deck able to heal their own minions, and Spirit Healer could be frighteningly good with Libram Paladin or whatever deck Veteran War Medic finds a home in. So we might have to build a deck with bounces for Hog Rancher and run a couple Murloc Tiny Fins so that we can flood the board with cute, and then gasp in horror as the opponent mercilessly slaughters them. Yeah, I'm not sure why we would do that, but the Barrens is not a friendly place for those too cute to defend themselves. Okay, enough with that. We've made it through all the cards now, so let's close this review out. And that's a wrap. If you like this video, do all that stuff you know helps us out. Like, subscribe, comment, you know. But really, let me know which card or archetype you're most excited to experiment with in a comment below. We will be opening pre-order packs and theory crafting fun experimental decks on stream later today. The most interesting 5 to 10 decks will be featured in Tuesday's video, suggesting a few experimental decks to try on day 1. If you have a deck or archetype you'd like us to look at, or just want to chime in, join us at twitch.tv/SSAlchemist. And as always, remember, you're awesome. Thank you for watching, and have an awesome day.
Strength and honor. This is who we are.